Jake Morrison had been a ship captain for 15 years, but nothing prepared him for this moment. His vessel, the Intrepid, floated in empty space near Jupiter. The crew was running their normal checks when the sensors started screaming. Something big was coming. The object appeared out of nowhere. 1 second there was empty space. The next second a massive ship sat in front of them. It was purple and shiny, bigger than anything humans had ever built. Jake's hands gripped the armrest of his chair. His heart was racing. Amy Carter worked at the communications desk. Her job was to handle all messages coming in and out of the ship. Right now, her screen was filled with strange symbols. The alien ship was trying to talk to them. She had trained for this moment, but it still felt unreal. The symbols changed. They cycled through hundreds of different patterns. Amy realized what was happening. The aliens were testing languages, trying to find one that humans would understand. After several minutes, words in English appeared on her screen. A voice came through the speakers. It sounded musical, like someone singing instead of talking. The voice introduced itself as Ambassador Thelrax. He said he came from something called the Galactic Concordance. This was a group of thousands of alien species from many different galaxies. Lisa Grant stood next to Jake. She was his second in command and had served in Earth's military for 20 years. Her instincts told her something was strange about this meeting. Why had the aliens waited until now? Humans had only recently figured out how to travel to other star systems. The timing seemed too perfect. Thelrax explained that his people had been watching Earth for 300 years. They had seen humans grow from primitive tribes to a spacefaring civilization. They watched as humans built cities, invented computers, and finally reached for the stars. Now that humans could travel beyond their own solar system, it was time to make contact. The ambassador had an offer. Humanity could join the Galactic Concordance. They could learn from thousands of other species. They could travel to distant worlds and share in the knowledge of the galaxy. But there was a catch. Earth would need to go through an evaluation period. The Concordance needed to make sure humans could live peacefully with other species. They had seen Earth's history. They knew about the wars, the violence, the way humans treated their own planet. Before humans could join the galactic community, they needed to prove they were safe. Jake asked for time to discuss this with Earth's government. Thelrax agreed. The alien ship would wait while humans decided what to do. As the communication ended, Jake looked at his crew. Everyone seemed excited and scared at the same time. 6 months passed. Earth's leaders had agreed to the evaluation. Now a group of humans traveled to the alien capital world. Connor Blake was chosen to lead the diplomatic team. He was a skilled negotiator who had helped end conflicts on Earth. If anyone could represent humanity well, it was him. The capital world was called Velcara. When Connor's ship landed, he could barely believe what he saw. The buildings were made of crystal that changed colors. There were aliens everywhere, walking on the streets, flying through the air, moving in ways that seemed impossible. Sophie Martinez was part of Connor's team. She was a scientist who studied alien life. Her job was to learn about the different species in the Concordance. What she discovered made her worried. Most of the aliens were herbivores, meaning they only ate plants. Some were omnivores, eating both plants and meat. But very few were carnivores like humans. Sophie learned that predator species were rare in the galaxy. Most predators had destroyed themselves before reaching the stars. They fought too much among themselves and never made it to space travel. The few predators that did make it to space were usually quarantined on their home planets. The Concordance considered them too dangerous. Humans were different. They were predators who had somehow learned to work together. They had built a civilization despite their violent nature. The aliens found this fascinating and frightening at the same time. The truth about humans became clear during a simple training exercise. Daniel Ross was a soldier who had volunteered to demonstrate Earth's military training methods. The exercise was held in a gym on Velcara. Many aliens came to watch. Daniel started with basic exercises: push-ups, sit-ups, running. The aliens watched in silence. What seemed normal to Daniel was shocking to them. He moved easily in Velcara's lighter gravity. Where other species would struggle and tire quickly, Daniel kept going. He ran for 2 hours without stopping. Alien doctors checked his vital signs afterward. They could not believe what they saw. His body had barely been stressed. His heart and lungs worked with an efficiency that seemed impossible to them. They realized that humans were built for endurance in ways no other species was. Kevin Wright made another discovery. He was an engineer working with alien technology teams. During a routine check of environmental systems, he noticed something strange. The temperature controls were set to ranges that humans would consider mild. When he asked about it, the aliens explained that these were the extreme limits most species could survive. Kevin did some research. He found that Earth was classified as a Class 9 death world. This meant it was one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy that supported intelligent life. The temperature swings, the weather patterns, the predators, the diseases, all of it made Earth incredibly hostile. Most species evolved on calm, stable worlds. Their planets had mild climates and few natural threats. Earth was the opposite. It was a world that constantly tried to kill everything living on it. Humans had survived by becoming tougher, stronger, and more adaptable than almost any other species in the galaxy. This information spread quickly through the concordance. Suddenly, humans were viewed differently. They were not just another species asking to join. They were survivors from one of the most hostile environments known. They were predators who had conquered a death world. Some aliens were excited by this. They wanted to learn from humans to understand how they had achieved so much despite their harsh origin. Others were scared. They worried that letting predators into the concordance would upset the peaceful balance that had existed for thousands of years. Connor spent his days meeting with alien leaders, trying to convince them that humans were safe. He talked about Earth's progress, how humans had learned to control their violent impulses, how they had built a global society based on cooperation. But he could see the doubt in their eyes. At night, Connor would talk with his team. They all felt the weight of representing their entire species. One wrong move, one sign of aggression, and humanity's chance to join the galactic community could be lost forever. The evaluation period was supposed to last 1 year. Connor wondered if they would make it that long. The research station on Kreshova had gone silent 3 months ago. 200 scientists and workers just disappeared. No distress calls, no signs of struggle, nothing. The Concordance sent Sophie Martinez to investigate. She was now their top expert on dangerous worlds thanks to her experience studying Earth. Brandon Cole went with her. He was a security officer, formerly a Marine on Earth. The Concordance had assigned 5 Velnar warriors to protect the team. The Velnar were considered the best fighters in the galaxy. They were tall, covered in thick scales, and trained from birth in combat. The team landed on Kreshova in the early morning. The research station was built near ancient ruins that the scientists had been studying. As they walked through the empty buildings, Sophie felt uneasy. There were no bodies, no blood, no signs of what happened. Brandon checked every room carefully. His training made him notice small details. Claw marks on the walls, broken equipment, the way doors had been torn from their hinges. Whatever attacked this place was strong and fast. They found the first body in the ruins. One of the Velnar warriors spotted it, half buried under collapsed stone. The body was dried out like something had drained all the moisture from it. Sophie took samples while Brandon stood guard. That is when the attack came. The creatures moved so fast that Sophie barely saw them. They were called Kresh predators native to this world, 6-legged beasts, each one standing 3 meters tall. Their skin glowed with strange patterns that shifted and changed. Their claws looked sharp enough to cut through metal. The Velnar warriors reacted instantly. They formed a defensive circle, their weapons raised. But they also started backing away toward the ship. This was standard Concordance military training. When facing a superior threat, you retreat. You protect the civilians and get to safety. Brandon Cole did not retreat. His body moved before his mind could think about it. Years of training and millions of years of evolution took over. He stepped forward, putting himself between the predators and Sophie. His rifle came up and he fired. 3 shots. 3 dead predators. The creatures had not expected resistance. They had not expected prey to fight back. The remaining 3 predators hesitated, confused by this new development. Brandon did not hesitate. He moved forward, firing as he walked. His eyes tracked multiple targets at once. His body anticipated where the predators would move. This was what humans were built for. This was what Earth had taught them. The Velnar warriors watched in shock. They had never seen anything like this. The human was not defending. He was hunting. He moved with a fluid grace that seemed impossible for something his size. His face showed no fear, only focus. One of the predators lunged at Brandon. He sidestepped and brought his rifle down hard on its head. The creature crashed to the ground. Another tried to circle behind him, but Brandon spun and fired without seeming to aim. The predator fell. The last predator did something that shocked everyone. It ran away. These creatures had terrorized this region of space for generations. They were apex predators on their own world. Nothing scared them. But now one of them was fleeing from a human. After the fight, Sophie checked Brandon for injuries. He had a few scratches, but nothing serious. The Velnar warriors could not stop staring at him. One of them, a commander named Velkur, kept asking questions. How had Brandon moved so fast? How had he tracked multiple targets? How had he shown no fear? Brandon tried to explain. On Earth, humans were not the biggest or strongest creatures. They were not the fastest or had the sharpest claws. But they were persistent. They could track prey for days. They could outlast anything. And when cornered, they could fight with a ferocity born from surviving on a world that constantly tried to kill them. The news of the incident spread quickly through the Concordance. Videos from the Velnar warriors' armor cameras were analyzed by military experts across dozens of worlds. They watched Brandon's movements over and over, trying to understand what they were seeing. The Concordance called an emergency council meeting. For the first time, they truly understood what it meant that humans were predators. It was not just about eating meat or having forward-facing eyes. It was about instinct, about the way humans responded to threats, about the violence that lived inside them waiting to be unleashed. Lucas Wright was a scientist who studied evolution. He was asked to present his findings to the council. He stood in front of thousands of alien representatives and explained what made humans different. He talked about persistence hunting, how ancient humans would chase animals for days until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. He explained the human stress response, how the body could temporarily increase strength and speed when threatened. He described human vision, evolved specifically for tracking prey through forests and grasslands. He showed them human teeth, designed for tearing meat. He explained how humans could eat almost anything to survive. He described the human ability to throw objects with deadly accuracy, a skill unique among intelligent species. But what really shocked the council was when Colonel Rachel Thompson explained human warfare. She was a military officer who had agreed to share information about Earth's military history. She showed them images of human weapons, human tactics, human battles. The aliens sat in stunned silence as Rachel described wars that had involved millions of soldiers. She talked about strategy, about how humans could plan attacks months or years in advance. She explained combined arms tactics where different types of military units worked together to overwhelm an enemy. She showed them nuclear weapons, bombs that could destroy entire cities, weapons that could make a planet uninhabitable for thousands of years. The Concordance had never developed such things. The very idea of destroying your own world seemed insane to them. Many council members wanted to reject humanity's application immediately. They argued that predators had no place in their peaceful society. They said humans were too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable, but others disagreed. They pointed out that humans had not used nuclear weapons in over 100 years. They had learned to control their violent nature. They had built a global government that prevented wars. They had proven that predators could evolve beyond their instincts. Peter Kane, Earth's ambassador, gave an impassioned speech. He admitted that humans were violent. He admitted they had a dark history, but he argued that this violence could be channeled toward protection rather than destruction. Humans could be guardians, defenders, protectors. The council debated for weeks. Meanwhile, humans waited anxiously. Their entire future hung in the balance. Would they be accepted into the galactic community, or would they be isolated, quarantined on Earth like so many other predator species? The decision was postponed when new reports came in from the frontier. Ships were disappearing. Colonies were going silent. Something was moving through concordant space, consuming everything in its path. The threat that would change everything was about to arrive. The warning came from a deep space observation post. The scientists there had detected something massive moving through the void between galaxies. It was heading toward concordant space at incredible speed. When they tried to scan it, their instruments showed readings that made no sense. The Concordants had encountered this threat twice before in their long history. They called them the Devourers. The name was accurate. These creatures consumed everything. They would arrive at a world, strip it of all biological matter, and move on. Plants, animals, people, everything became food for the swarm. Both previous encounters had ended the same way. The Concordants had evacuated entire sectors of space. They abandoned colonies, space stations, even entire planets. The military doctrine was clear. You cannot fight the Devourers. You can only run and hope they move away. Jake Morrison had been promoted to admiral after his handling of first contact with humanity. Now he sat in a war room on Velkara, surrounded by the highest-ranking military officers in the Concordance. They were planning the largest evacuation in galactic history. The Devourers had emerged in the Andros sector. If they continued on their current path, they would reach Earth's region of space within 6 months. Millions of humans and billions of aliens would need to flee their homes. Entire civilizations would be abandoned. Jake listened to the evacuation plans for an hour before he spoke. When he did, his words shocked everyone in the room. He did not suggest running. He suggested fighting, not just slowing the Devourers down, but actually stopping them, defeating them. The alien commanders stared at him like he had lost his mind. Fight the Devourers? It was impossible. Every species that had tried had been consumed. The Devourers were the ultimate predator. Nothing in the galaxy could stand against them. Lisa Grant stood and activated a holographic display. She had been working with human military planners for months, developing strategies in case the Devourers ever returned. Now she presented those plans to the shocked Concordance officers. The strategy was aggressive. It went against everything the Concordance military believed. Instead of running, they would set a trap. They would choose the battlefield. They would draw the Devourers in and then hit them with overwhelming force. The plan used the Devourers' own behavior against them. These creatures were driven by hunger. They could not resist a world full of life. So humans would give them a target too tempting to ignore, a planet that seemed defended but vulnerable. The Devourers would commit their forces to consume it, and that is when the trap would spring. Many of the Concordance officers rejected the plan immediately. It was too risky. Too many things could go wrong. And even if it worked, the casualties would be enormous. Better to evacuate and preserve lives than to throw them away in a hopeless battle. But some officers saw the logic in Jake's proposal. If they ran now, the Devourers would keep coming. Today they would lose the Andros sector. Next time they might lose even more. Eventually there would be nowhere left to run. At some point someone had to make a stand. The debate raged for days. Meanwhile the Devourers were getting closer. Every hour they delayed was another hour of territory lost. Finally, the Concordance Council made a decision. They would try Jake's plan, but only because humans volunteered to lead the defense. The chosen battleground was the Thalos system. It had 3 inhabited planets and several mining colonies. The Concordance began evacuating civilians while military forces poured in. 300 alien warships took up positions. 50 human vessels joined them. Brandon Hayes commanded the human ground forces. He was now a colonel, promoted after his actions on Kreshva. His mission was to prepare Thalos Prime, the main planet for the Devourer assault. The Concordance officers expected Brandon to build defensive positions. Walls, bunkers, fortified strong points. Instead, he built traps, massive underground facilities filled with explosives, automated weapon systems hidden beneath the surface, false installations designed to draw the Devourers into kill zones. He also deployed weapons that made the aliens uncomfortable. Nuclear bombs, biological agents, chemical weapons. Things the Concordance had banned centuries ago. Brandon explained that when fighting for survival, you use every tool available. The aliens did not like it, but they did not stop him. Human soldiers worked around the clock preparing the planet. They wore powered armor designed to handle Earth's crushing gravity. In the lighter gravity of Thalos Prime, they moved with inhuman speed and strength. The alien soldiers training alongside them were amazed and intimidated in equal measure. Sophie Martinez studied the Devourers using data from previous encounters. She discovered something important. The creatures were not mindless. They had a hive intelligence, a central consciousness that controlled all the individual organisms. If that consciousness could be disrupted, the swarm would fall apart. She developed a biological weapon specifically designed to attack the hive-mind connection. It would not kill the Devourers instantly, but it would confuse them, slow them down, make them vulnerable. The weapon was loaded onto missiles and distributed to the fleet. The Devourers arrived 2 weeks later. Their ships, if you could call them that, were actually massive living organisms. Thousands of them, each one the size of a city. They moved through space like a swarm of insects, coordinated and relentless. The Concordance fleet engaged them at the edge of the system. The battle was fierce. Alien ships fired everything they had, but the Devourers kept coming. For every ship they destroyed, 10 more appeared. It looked like a repeat of history. The defenders would be overwhelmed and forced to retreat. But this time, retreat was part of the plan. The fleet fell back slowly, making the Devourers fight for every meter of space. They were buying time for the ground forces to finish preparations. They were also leading the Devourers exactly where they wanted them. The Devourers took the bait. They sensed the life on Thalos Prime and swarmed toward it. Millions of organisms descended on the planet like a living rain. They spread out across the surface, seeking anything organic to consume. Brandon waited until the Devourers were fully committed, until they had landed in force and begun their feeding frenzy. Then he gave the order. The underground facilities detonated. Nuclear weapons vaporized entire Devourer concentrations. Biological weapons spread through their ranks. Automated turrets emerged from hiding and opened fire. The Devourers reeled in confusion. They had never encountered resistance like this. They had never met prey that fought back so viciously. And then the human soldiers emerged. Wearing their powered armor, they moved through the battlefield like vengeful spirits. They fired weapons that could punch through the Devourers' thick hides. They threw explosives with deadly accuracy. They fought with a ferocity that shocked even their alien allies. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers felt something they had never experienced before. They felt threatened. They had finally encountered something higher on the food chain. They had encountered humans. The battle on Thalos Prime lasted 3 days. 3 days of constant fighting, explosions, and death. The Devourers kept coming wave after wave, but for the first time they were losing. The ground was covered with their dead. The air smelled of burned flesh and chemicals. Brandon Hayes fought alongside his troops. His armor was scorched and dented from close combat. He had stopped counting how many Devourers he had killed. What mattered was that they were winning. The impossible was happening. In space, Admiral Jake Morrison commanded the fleet with growing confidence. The human ships, smaller and faster than the Concordance vessels, darted through the battle. They hit the Devourer ships hard and then retreated before the enemy could respond. It was a tactic called hit and run, and humans had perfected it over thousands of years of warfare. The alien captains watched and learned. They had spent their entire lives training for defensive operations. Now they were seeing offensive warfare in action. It was brutal, aggressive, and effective. Some found it disturbing. Others found it exciting. Sophie's biological weapon was working better than expected. The Devourers' coordination was breaking down. They were still dangerous, but they no longer moved as one unified force. They made mistakes. They left openings. And humans were experts at exploiting weaknesses. On the 4th day, the Devourers retreated. It was the first time in recorded history that they had withdrawn from a battle. The swarm pulled back from Thalos Prime and regrouped at the edge of the system. The defenders had won, but everyone knew it was not over. The victory at Thalos changed everything. News spread across the Concordance at light speed. The species that had always run from the Devourers had finally fought back and won. Humanity went from being questionable predators to heroes overnight, but Jake knew one victory was not enough. The Devourers would adapt. They would learn. If the Concordance wanted to survive, they needed to do more than defend. They needed to attack. They needed to hunt the hunters. The Concordance Council authorized the creation of a new military force. It would be trained in human combat doctrine, using human tactics and strategies. Ashley Morgan, a general from Earth, was chosen to lead the training program. Ashley had spent 30 years in Earth's military. She had studied every major war in human history. Now she found herself teaching aliens how to fight like humans. It was challenging work. The aliens had to unlearn everything they knew about warfare. The first lesson was about mindset. Concordance soldiers were taught to preserve life, to minimize casualties, to retreat when necessary. Human soldiers were taught to complete the mission regardless of cost. Ashley had to find a balance between these two philosophies. She taught them about aggression. Not mindless violence, but controlled aggression. The ability to press an attack when you had the advantage. The willingness to take risks when the potential reward was worth it. concepts that came naturally to predators but felt alien to most concordant species. She taught them about combined arms, how infantry, armor, artillery, and air support could work together to overwhelm an enemy, how different units could cover each other's weaknesses. The aliens were used to operating in separate, specialized groups. Learning to coordinate was difficult but necessary. Most importantly, she taught them about psychological warfare, how to use fear as a weapon, how to break an enemy's will to fight, how to make them question their own strength. These were lessons that humans had learned from being both predator and prey. The transformation took months. Young Concordance officers attended Earth's military academies. They studied human wars, analyzed human tactics, and trained with human soldiers. It was an intense education in violence. Nicole Stewart worked with alien engineers to upgrade the Concordance fleet. The aliens built ships for exploration and defense. They were efficient and comfortable. Nicole rebuilt them for war. She added heavier weapons, stronger armor, and redundant systems that could keep fighting even when damaged. The most controversial change was adding human crew members to alien ships. Many Concordance captains objected. They did not want predators on their vessels. But orders were orders. Soon every major warship had at least a dozen humans in key positions. The results were immediate. Human weapons officers were faster and more accurate than their alien counterparts. Human tactical advisors spotted opportunities that aliens missed. Human engineers could keep systems running under conditions that would defeat anyone else. 6 months after Thalos, the new combined fleet was ready. Intelligence reports showed the Devourers had regrouped in a nebula 3 sectors away. They were feeding on abandoned colonies, rebuilding their strength. Jake decided it was time to take the offensive. The attack was carefully planned. They would not wait for the Devourers to come to them. They would go to the enemy. They would attack the swarm while it was vulnerable. They would show the Devourers what it felt like to be prey. Ryan Mitchell led a squadron of human fighters into the nebula. The Concordance had never used a small attack craft because they seemed too fragile. But humans understood something important. Sometimes size did not matter. Sometimes speed and aggression could overwhelm a larger force. The fighters screamed through the nebula, targeting the Devourer bioships. They were outnumbered 100 to 1, but they did not care. They were humans, and humans did not back down from a fight. They fired missiles, dropped bombs, and flew so close to the enemy that collisions were a constant danger. The Devourers were confused by this tactic. They were used to large capital ships fighting at long range. These small craft were too fast, too aggressive, too unpredictable. The swarm's coordination broke down as individual bioships tried to chase the fighters. That was when the main fleet attacked. While the Devourers were distracted by the fighters, the capital ships moved in. They formed a battle line and opened fire with everything they had. The nebula lit up with explosions. Lisa Grant commanded the second wave. Her ships carried assault troops ready to board the largest Devourer bioships. It was an insane plan. No one had ever boarded a Devourer vessel and survived. But if they could reach the hive nodes, they could cripple the swarm's coordination. The boarding teams were mostly human, with some Concordance volunteers. They wore heavy armor and carried weapons designed for close combat. They cut through the bioship hulls and fought their way inside, through corridors that pulsed like living tissue. It was brutal work. The Devourers fought hard to protect their hive nodes. The boarding teams took heavy casualties, but they kept pushing forward. They had learned something important from humans. Sometimes you had to be willing to sacrifice to achieve victory. When the first hive node was destroyed, the effect was immediate. Thousands of Devourer organisms suddenly lost coordination. They stopped fighting and started fleeing. The swarm was beginning to break apart. The battle raged for 2 days. When it was over, the nebula was filled with debris. The Devourers had lost more than half their numbers. The survivors fled deeper into the void. The Concordance had won another victory, but the cost had been high. Thousands were dead, dozens of ships destroyed. The war continued for 3 years. 3 long years of battle after battle. The Concordance pushed the Devourers back system by system. They learned to fight. They learned to hunt. And slowly they started winning. But the war changed everyone. Sophie Martinez studied the psychological effects on both humans and aliens. What she found was troubling. The Concordant species were becoming more aggressive. They were starting to think like predators. Some saw this as necessary evolution. Others worried they were losing their peaceful nature. For humans, the war brought different problems. Kyle Bennett was a soldier who had fought in a dozen major battles. He was good at his job, too good. He found himself enjoying the combat, looking forward to the next fight. This scared him. Earth had spent centuries teaching humans to control their violent instincts. They had learned to channel aggression into sports, competition, and peaceful pursuits. But the war had unleashed something dark. Kyle worried that humanity would not be able to put that darkness away when the war ended. Connor Blake addressed these concerns in a speech to the Concordance Council. He stood before thousands of representatives and spoke honestly. Yes, humans were violent. Yes, they had darkness inside them. Yes, the war had brought out their predatory nature. But he reminded the council that humans had always lived with this darkness. They were born predators on a death world. The violence was always there, lurking beneath the surface. What made humans special was not that they lacked darkness, but that they chose to control it. He asked the galaxy to trust them. To believe that humans could be both predator and protector, that they could unleash violence when needed to defend the innocent and then put it away when the threat was gone. It was a difficult balance, but humans had been walking that line for generations. The final battle came in the third year of the war. Intelligence had located the Devourer's main staging area. It was a massive asteroid field where the swarm had established something like a home base. If they could destroy this base, they could end the war. Jake Morrison assembled the largest fleet in galactic history. 5,000 ships from dozens of different species. Half were Concordance vessels commanded by aliens who had learned human tactics. Half were human ships crewed by soldiers who had been fighting this war from the beginning. The plan was simple, but brutal. They would attack in waves, each one designed to wear down the Devourer defenses. They would bombard the asteroid field until nothing was left alive. They would sacrifice ships and lives to ensure the swarm was destroyed completely. Lisa Grant led the first wave. Her ships hit the asteroid field hard, targeting the largest biostructures. The Devourers responded with fury. The battle became a chaotic mess of ships, missiles, and explosions. Space itself seemed to burn. Brandon Hayes commanded ground forces that landed on the larger asteroids. They fought through swarms of Devourer organisms, planting nuclear charges deep inside the rocks. It was dangerous work. Many soldiers did not make it back to their ships. The battle lasted 3 days. 3 days that felt like an eternity. Ships were destroyed by the hundreds. Thousands of soldiers died. But the Allied forces kept pushing forward. They had learned from humans that sometimes victory required sacrifice. On the third day, Sophie's weapons finally broke through to the central hive mind. The biological agents she had developed targeted the quantum connections that held the swarm together. When those connections broke, the Devourers fell apart. Without their hive mind, the individual Devourers became confused and disorganized. They stopped coordinating. They stopped fighting effectively. They became easy targets. The Allied fleet systematically destroyed every remaining bioship. When the last Devourer ship was destroyed, a strange silence fell over the battlefield. For a moment, no one could believe it was over. Then the celebrations began. Ships lit up with fireworks. Soldiers cheered. After 3 years of war, they had finally won, but the victory was bittersweet. Over 2 billion people had died in the war. Entire worlds were scarred by battle. Economies were destroyed. Families were torn apart. The cost of victory had been enormous. Lisa was promoted to admiral and given command of the Concordance Defense Initiative. Her mission was to make sure the galaxy never forgot the lessons learned in blood. They needed to stay strong. They needed to remain ready. They could never again be caught unprepared, but there were concerns. Some Concordance species worried about what they had become. They had spent thousands of years building a peaceful civilization. The war had forced them to embrace violence. Could they ever go back to being peaceful? For humanity, the victory raised similar questions. They had proven their worth to the galaxy. They had shown that predatory instincts could be used for protection. But they had also reminded themselves of what they were capable of. The darkness was still there, and it was powerful. Lucas Wright wrote a paper that tried to answer these questions. He argued that the galaxy needed balance. Prey species brought cooperation, culture, and peaceful innovation. But predator species brought the ability to face threats, to make hard decisions, to do what was necessary when all peaceful options failed. Neither side was better than the other. Both were needed. The peaceful species reminded the predators why they fought. The predators protected the peaceful species so they could continue being peaceful. Together, they were stronger than either could be alone. The years after the war saw massive changes. New military academies opened across the Concordance. They taught both human and alien combat doctrine. Officers learned to think both offensively and defensively. Soldiers learned to be aggressive when necessary and restrained when possible. The fleet was reorganized. Ships were designed with both exploration and combat in mind. Every vessel had mixed crews of humans and aliens. The different species learned from each other. Aliens learned aggression and determination from humans. Humans learned patience and wisdom from aliens. Culturally, the galaxy changed too. Young aliens, especially those who had fought in the war, saw humans differently. They were no longer scary predators to be feared. They were friends, teachers, protectors. Human culture spread across dozens of worlds. Amy Carter, now a captain with her own ship, patrolled the frontier with a mixed crew. Her vessel was called the Guardian, and the name was appropriate. They protected colonies, responded to emergencies, and kept watch for new threats. The crew worked perfectly together, humans and aliens covering each other's weaknesses. On Earth, monuments were built to honor those who had fallen. But the monuments carried an important message. They did not glorify war. They did not celebrate violence. Instead, they reminded humanity of what they had been, what they were, and what they must strive to become. The inscription spoke of duty, sacrifice, and the burden of being a predator in a galaxy that needed protection. They reminded humans that their greatest strength was not their ability to destroy, but their ability to choose not to be capable of violence but to use it only when necessary. Peter Kane gave his final speech to the Concordance Council 5 years after the war ended. He was retiring, going home to Earth. He talked about the journey humanity had taken from isolated Death World inhabitants to respected members of galactic society. He spoke about lessons learned. The Concordance had learned that survival sometimes required violence, that predators had a place in a peaceful society, that strength properly used was protection, not tyranny. Humanity had learned that being a predator did not mean abandoning civilization, that power without restraint was tyranny, that their greatest achievement was not conquering a death world, but choosing to protect rather than destroy. 50 years had passed since humans first met the Galactic Concordance. The galaxy was a very different place now. Elena Martinez graduated from the Concordance Xenobiological Institute with the highest honors. She was Sophie's granddaughter, following in her grandmother's footsteps. Elena's thesis explored what it meant to be a predator species in galactic society. She studied the advantages and disadvantages, the benefits and costs. Her work became required reading in schools across hundreds of worlds. She wrote that Earth had not raised prey. It had produced predators. But more importantly, it had produced predators who could choose not to hunt. Predators who understood that their greatest strength was not their ability to destroy, but their ability to protect. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. In a universe filled with threats both known and unknown, having predators on your side was not just useful, it was essential. Humanity had proven to be exactly the kind of predators the galaxy needed. They were not conquerors. They were not destroyers. They were guardians. They stood between civilization and chaos. They made the hard choices so that others did not have to. They did what was necessary to protect those who could not protect themselves. Jake Morrison retired to a quiet colony world after 40 years of military service.
He had become a legend in the Concordance.
Young officers studied his tactics. His battles were taught in every military academy. But Jake just wanted to rest. He spent his days tending a garden, something that amazed his alien neighbors. A predator from a death world growing flowers and vegetables. It seemed contradictory to them. But Jake understood something important. Being a predator did not mean you could not appreciate beauty. It did not mean you could not create and nurture life. Brandon Hayes also retired, but he could not stay away from military life. He opened a training academy that accepted students from all species. The academy taught a unique blend of human aggression and alien wisdom. Its graduates were among the most respected soldiers in the galaxy. The academy's motto was simple but powerful: strength in service. It captured the essence of what humans had brought to the Concordance. Strength was not about domination. It was about having the power to protect and choosing to use it for good. Sophie Martinez lived to see her 100th birthday. She spent her final years writing about her experiences with both humans and aliens. Her books became bestsellers across the galaxy. People wanted to understand how two very different types of species could work together so well. In her final book, Sophie wrote about balance. She explained that the galaxy needed both types of species. Peaceful species reminded everyone what they were fighting for. They created art, music, literature, and philosophy. They built societies based on cooperation and understanding. Predator species provided the strength to protect those achievements. They understood violence in a way peaceful species never could. They could look at threats objectively and make the hard decisions necessary for survival. Together, both types of species created something better than either could achieve alone. The concordance continued to grow stronger. New species joined regularly, attracted by the promise of protection and cooperation. The military remained vigilant, always watching for new threats. But they also focused on exploration, diplomacy, and trade. Human culture had spread throughout the galaxy in ways no one expected. Alien children played Earth sports. Restaurants served human food, adapted for different biologies. Human music topped charts on dozens of worlds. Human literature was translated into thousands of languages. But the most popular human export was something unexpected: movies. Aliens loved human films, especially action movies. They were fascinated by humanity's creative depictions of conflict and resolution. Movie theaters on alien worlds were always packed when a new human film released. Amy Carter rose to the rank of admiral, taking over Lisa's position when she retired. Amy commanded the Frontier Defense Forces, overseeing dozens of patrol groups. Her ships were always ready, always watching, always prepared to respond to threats. She believed strongly in mixed crews. Every ship under her command had both humans and aliens working together. She had seen firsthand how well the different species complemented each other. Humans provided aggression and determination. Aliens provided patience and strategic thinking. There were still challenges, of course. Some species still feared humans. Some humans still struggled with their violent nature. There were incidents, conflicts, misunderstandings. But overall, the integration was successful beyond anyone's expectations. New threats emerged over the decades. Pirates, rogue factions, territorial disputes. But none were as dangerous as the Devourers had been. And each time the Concordance responded with strength and determination. They had learned to fight. They had learned to hunt. And they no longer ran from danger. On Earth, humanity reflected on how far they had come. From a single planet to a major power in galactic politics. From isolated primitives to respected members of a vast civilization. From predators who only knew how to hunt to guardians who knew when to fight and when to show mercy. Children on Earth learned about the war in school. They studied the battles, the heroes, the sacrifices. But they also learned about the philosophy behind it all. They learned that being strong meant knowing when to use that strength. That being dangerous meant understanding the responsibility that came with danger. Earth's military academies became the most prestigious in the galaxy. Young aliens competed for spots, wanting to learn from the species that had changed warfare forever. The training was tough, pushing students to their limits. But it produced soldiers who were both strong and wise. Connor Blake's descendants continued his diplomatic work. The Blake family became synonymous with human-alien relations. They worked tirelessly to maintain the bonds between species, to resolve conflicts before they became wars, to remind everyone of the lessons learned in blood. The Concordance established a holiday to commemorate the end of the war. It was called Unity Day, and it celebrated the cooperation between different species. On this day, parades were held on hundreds of worlds. Human and alien soldiers marched together. Children from different species played together in the streets. But Unity Day also remembered the cost. Moments of silence honored those who had died. Memorials listed the names of the fallen, human and alien alike. It was important to remember that peace came at a price, and that price had been paid in blood. Lucas Wright's theory about balance became accepted wisdom. Schools taught it. Politicians quoted it. Military planners used it as a guiding principle. The galaxy needed both peace-loving species and warrior species. Both had their place. Both were valuable. As the years passed, the distinction between predator and prey species became less important. Mixed marriages became common. Children were born with heritage from multiple worlds. Cultural exchanges happened constantly. The galaxy was truly becoming united, but humanity never forgot its nature. They were predators born and raised on a death world that would never change. What had changed was their understanding of what being a predator meant. It did not mean being cruel or destructive. It meant having the strength to face threats and the wisdom to know when fighting was necessary. Earth did not raise prey. It produced predators, and those predators had given the galaxy a gift. They had shown that even the most violent nature could be channeled toward protection, that even the darkest instincts could serve the light, that predators could choose to be guardians. The galaxy was safer because humans existed. Civilizations flourished under their protection. Art, science, and culture bloomed knowing that guardians stood watch. And if new threats emerged, the Concordance was ready. They had humans on their side, and humans knew how to hunt. The story of humanity's arrival in galactic society became legend. It was told to children as a bedtime story. It was studied by scholars as a case study in cooperation. It was used by military leaders as an example of strategic thinking. It became part of the shared culture of thousands of species, and the lesson was always the same. Earth does not raise prey. It produces predators. But not all predators are monsters. Some choose to be heroes. Some choose to protect rather than destroy. Some choose to be guardians of civilization rather than its destroyers. Humanity had made that choice, and the galaxy was better for it.